Imagine sitting in a high-rise corporate office, the glass windows reflecting the golden rays of a Monday morning, the tension in the air almost visible as candidates in sharp suits, polished shoes, and confident smiles waited to be called into the biggest interview of their lives. But suddenly, the heavy doors opened not to reveal a man in a blazer or a woman in heels, but a tiny figure, barely 10 years old, clutching a worn-out teddy bear in one hand and a wrinkled folder in the other. Her eyes were wide with both fear and determination. She looked too small for the room, too innocent for the corporate battlefield, yet when she softly said, "Excuse me, my mom's sick, so I came instead," the entire office froze. That's where our story begins. And before I tell you what the Millionaire CEO did when he saw this brave little girl walk into his boardroom, make sure you like this video and subscribe to our channel, because stories like this one will touch your heart and inspire your soul. The CEO, Alexander Knight, was a man known for his ruthless efficiency. He was the kind of leader who could close a multi-million-dollar deal with a single phone call, who built his empire brick by brick, and who had no time for foolishness. His employees both respected and feared him because he valued one thing above all: results. On this day, Alexander was prepared to meet candidates who could potentially serve as his new executive assistant. He was expecting resumes filled with degrees from prestigious universities, flawless presentation skills, and unwavering confidence. What he did not expect was a little girl with messy pigtails and second-hand shoes standing before him, her small hand holding out a folder that looked like it had been through rain and wind. The room went silent. Some candidates chuckled under their breath, others looked annoyed. But the girl stood tall, or at least as tall as her tiny body could manage. And spoke again, this time with trembling lips yet unshaken determination. "My mom, she was supposed to be here. But she got sick last night. She couldn't get out of bed this morning. She said this interview was important. She said it could change our lives. So I came for her." Alexander narrowed his sharp blue eyes, studying the girl like one would study an unsolvable puzzle. At first, he thought it was some sort of prank or a ridiculous stunt. But something about the girl's voice, the way she clutched that old teddy bear as if it was her shield, stopped him from dismissing her outright. He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms across his chest. "And what exactly do you think you're going to do here, little one?" he asked, his voice calm yet intimidating. The girl stepped forward, her knees trembling but her eyes glowing with a kind of innocence and bravery that no adult in the room carried. "I don't know how to do interviews. I don't have big words. But I can tell you about my mom. She's the hardest worker I've ever seen. She wakes up before the sun, she works late into the night. She never complains even when she's tired, even when she doesn't eat because she wants me to have food first. She's smart, really smart. She fixes things, she solves problems. She always tells me, don't give up, no matter how hard it gets. That's why I came, because she didn't give up raising me, and I won't give up on her today." The silence that followed was unlike anything Alexander's boardroom had ever known. The candidates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The HR manager tried to whisper something to Alexander, but he raised a hand to silence her. He couldn't tear his eyes away from the little girl. Somewhere deep inside, beneath all the layers of steel and success, something stirred. Memories long buried began to rise. He remembered a small boy, himself. Once standing in shabby clothes, watching his mother beg for a job after his father had abandoned them. He remembered the humiliation, the hunger, the endless nights where his mother cried herself to sleep yet woke up every morning with a smile for him. He remembered the pain of being dismissed simply because they were poor, because they didn't fit the mold of society's expectations. And now, decades later, standing in front of him was a mirror of his own past, except this time, it wasn't him. It was a little girl standing up for her mother. Alexander cleared his throat, his voice slightly softer now. "What's your name?" he asked. The girl clutched her teddy bear tighter. "Emily," she whispered. "Emily," Alexander repeated, as if testing the sound of it on his lips. "And what would you like me to do with this, resume?" Emily shuffled forward and placed the wrinkled folder on the massive mahogany desk. Inside were papers filled with her mother's qualifications. Secretarial experience, computer skills, letters of recommendation. But tucked inside was also something unexpected, a crayon drawing. It showed a stick figure woman with a big smile, holding hands with a small girl under a rainbow. In messy handwriting at the top were the words, "My mom is the best worker in the world." For the first time in years, Alexander felt his heart falter. He quickly closed the folder, hiding the drawing from the others in the room. He straightened, masking his emotions behind his usual stern expression. "Thank you, Emily. That will be all." Emily's face fell. She thought she had failed. She thought she had embarrassed her mother by coming here. With her shoulders slumped, she began to turn away. But Alexander's voice stopped her. "Wait." Every eye in the room darted back to him. Alexander stood, towering over everyone. He looked directly at Emily, and in a voice that was both commanding and strangely gentle, he said, "You may tell your mother that she doesn't need to attend another interview. The job is hers." Gasps filled the room. The candidates protested, the HR manager tried to argue, but Alexander silenced them all with a single glance. Emily's eyes lit up with tears of joy. "Ah, really?" she asked. Alexander nodded once. "Really?" Emily dropped her teddy bear and ran forward, hugging his leg tightly. For the first time in a very long time, Alexander Knight smiled. And that, dear viewers, was only the beginning of a story that would change all of their lives. The news of the unusual interview spread like wildfire across the company. Some employees mocked it as a foolish emotional decision, others whispered in awe, but Alexander didn't care what anyone thought. He had made up his mind. Emily's mother, Grace, would start as his executive assistant the very next week. Grace was still weak from her illness when Emily rushed home that evening. The little girl threw herself onto the bed, hugging her mother tightly. "Mama! Mama! You got the job. Mr. Knight said you don't have to interview anymore." Grace's tired eyes widened in shock. She thought Emily was just pretending, spinning one of her imaginative stories again. But when Emily showed her the CEO's business card, Grace realized it was real. Tears streamed down her face as she hugged her daughter, whispering, "Oh, Emily, what have you done?" What she had done, unknowingly, was set into motion a chain of events that would not only change their lives but also heal wounds buried deep in the heart of a man who thought he had forgotten how to feel. When Grace reported to work, she expected to be treated coldly, perhaps even humiliated. Instead, she found that Alexander had personally instructed his staff to make her comfortable. On her first day, he called her into his office. She stood nervously, clutching a notepad, unsure of what to expect. But Alexander didn't bark orders at her. Instead, he asked, "How are you feeling now? Has your health improved?" Grace was taken aback. This wasn't the ruthless man she had heard rumors about. She nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. Thank you for asking. And thank you, for giving me this opportunity. I know I don't deserve such kindness." Alexander cut her off. "You do. You've earned it. Your daughter made sure of that." At the mention of Emily, Grace's eyes softened. She's everything to me. I don't know how I'd survive without her." For a moment, Alexander said nothing. He simply stared at Grace, then turned his gaze to the photo on his desk, a rare personal possession he kept hidden from most eyes. It was a picture of him as a boy with his mother, taken long before she passed away. The similarities struck him again, and he realized why he had been so moved. Grace and Emily reminded him of his own childhood, of the woman who had sacrificed everything for him. Days turned into weeks, and Grace proved herself to be an exceptional assistant. She was efficient, dedicated, and surprisingly intuitive. But more than that, she brought something into Alexander's world that had been missing for years: warmth. Sometimes Emily would visit the office after school, running through the halls with her teddy bear, spreading laughter wherever she went. At first, the employees thought it was inappropriate, but soon even the coldest executives found themselves smiling when Emily appeared. Alexander, the man once feared as a stone-hearted CEO, found himself looking forward to those visits. Emily had a way of melting his defenses, asking innocent questions that no one else dared to. "Why do you always look so serious, Mr. Knight? Don't you ever laugh? Don't you have a family?" At first, he deflected her questions with curt answers. But over time, he began to open up in small ways. He told her about his mother, about the hardships they faced, about the reason he worked so hard. Emily listened with wide eyes and, in her childlike honesty, said, "Then you're just like my mom. She works hard too. You should smile more. She says smiling makes your heart less heavy." Those words echoed in Alexander's mind long after Emily had skipped out of the office. One evening, when everyone had left, Alexander sat alone in his office, staring at the drawing Emily had slipped into his folder that day: the rainbow, the stick figures, the words, "My mom is the best worker in the world." For years, his heart had been locked in chains of ambition and bitterness. But now, cracks were forming. And through those cracks, light was finally seeping in. The transformation didn't happen overnight, but it was undeniable. Alexander began implementing policies to support single mothers and struggling families in his company. He started funding scholarships for children like Emily. His employees were astonished. This was not the CEO they had known. This was a man who had been changed by the courage of a little girl who walked into a job interview with nothing but a teddy bear and a heart full of love. As for Grace, she found herself growing stronger each day, not just because of her job but because of the man who had given her a chance. And though she never asked for more, Alexander found himself drawn to her, respecting her resilience, admiring her kindness. Emily noticed before anyone else. One day she giggled and whispered to her mom, "I think Mr. Knight likes you." Grace blushed, brushing it off as childish imagination. But deep down, even she wondered. And so, what began as a desperate act of love, a little girl walking into a boardroom to save her mother, became the beginning of a story about second chances, healing, and the power of innocence to break through the hardest of hearts. So if this story touched your heart today, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel, because sometimes the smallest voices carry the biggest lessons.